Hello, welcome back to Final Resonance TV and episode number 20 of Van Halen Stories. Yeah, today my guest is the incredible Phil X from Bon Jovi and the Drills. Do you say Phil X and the Drills or the Drills?
I prefer Phil X and the Drills. Okay. But I know it sounds like, here's Phil X from Phil X and the Drills. Or, hey, this is Phil X from Phil X, the Phil X from Phil X and the Drills.
Right, right. So the Bon Jovi thing, you've been there 11 years, is that right?
Holy smokes. Yeah. Well, there was a break. I covered for Richie in 2011, and then he came back. And then in 2013 again, and then he didn't come back. So I've been there since 2013. So like 9 years.
Yeah. And I heard your first show was 50,000 people.
I mean, and it's funny because a lot of people ask if I was nervous, and I feel like, it seems like, it's do or die kind of, what's the way they say it? Fight or flight. Right. I wasn't nervous because I didn't have time to be nervous. I walked on stage and I said, dude, you've been playing and singing your whole life. It's just Bon Jovi songs. You got this. And then that's when I just got on stage and delivered. And it's funny because it could have gone bad and I would have got sent home. But I did that show, and then I did another 12 shows, I think. And then that was my month that year.
Well, do you know Buck Johnson? Do you know Buck?
Buck Johnson. That sounds familiar.
Plays keyboards with Aerosmith.
I do know Buck.
Okay.
I love Buck. I saw Buck. I talked to him after an Aerosmith residency in Vegas before lockdown.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was 2019 or 2020.
Yeah, he's been on here. He's a friend of he was in our local music scene, and so he's been on my channel. And he told me the story of his first gig with Aerosmith, which is very similar to yours. He had to fly over to Europe, and he didn't have he had to learn the set on the way on this plane.
Oh man, well, that's a long flight.
Right.
In 2013, when I got the call, John, I was at Trader Joe's.
Right.
Yeah, and then you get a call from John Bon Jovi, and you're like, hey man, John Bon Jovi calling. Woohoo! What's up, Johnny? And then, but at that point, it was like, hey, we're going to need you to play in Calgary tonight. And I was like, tonight? My girl's at home, and she's like, she's in the first horrible trimester. Ooh. Yeah, so I was like, yeah. He's like, no, we really need you tonight. We don't know where Richie is, and we're playing in Calgary, and Scott's gonna call you, Scott Casey, the road manager. So he called me, and he got everything in line. I was working on Scott Stapp's solo record, his first solo record. Okay. And we had done 6 songs, and then so I had a bunch of gear over at Howard Benson, the producer, his studio, and I called Mark Van Gool, the tech, and I said, hey, can you meet me at the Van Nuys Signature Airport, but can you go to Howard Benson's studio and grab these guitars first? And then we hooked up. I got on a plane, a jet, and that was going to fly me to the gig, but it was funny because John was like, hey, we got a new record out. Can you learn these 3 new songs on your way in? And I was like, you probably don't hear no a lot, but no. I haven't played a Bon Jovi song in 2 years. I'm going to spend that flight reacquainting myself with what I knew 2 years ago. Because, in that 2 years, you got to think of a session musician who's been not only writing and recording with his band, but has worked on anything from Chris Cornell to Kelly Clarkson in that time period in the studio. So it's like, I gotta get my head in the game. And then I didn't make it.
What time of the day was it when he called, and what time was the gig?
It was afternoon, and I called my girl and I said, hey baby, Bon Jovi called. And she's like, hey, so when are you leaving? I go, well, the car is gonna be at the house in an hour. Like this. And she's like amazing. She's like, what, do you need me to do laundry or pack anything for you or go to the store? You need anything? And I was like, man, you're amazing.
Right.
We're thinking good. I'm just going to come home, pack some clothes, and jump on over. So there was plane funk. So I got on the plane, I'm ready to go, and then bam, something happened. Hey, we got to change planes.
Oh wow.
And then I changed planes, and the next plane, the second plane wasn't as fast as the first plane. So not only was I going to be flying off late or taking off late, but I was going to land later. And so when I landed, you know, got in the van, got to the venue, and they were done. They did the show with Bob Bandera, who's the auxiliary guitar player, amazing dude, great vocalist, great guitar player. He just kind of like filled in all the parts that Richie would have done, and then John had to play a lot more than he usually played, and he didn't like that. So they were happy to, although I was late, they were happy to see me. And then the next day we did a very lengthy sound check in Edmonton, Canada, Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And John's like, what do you need to go through? And I was like, okay, well, let's go through this and this and this and this and this. And then he goes, what about those 3 songs? He goes, yeah, I got them charted, so we can do that. So
it sounds like, I mean, I've always, from what I've seen of John Bon Jovi, he's always been very together and has his stuff together. Is that appropriate?
I mean, he's like any boss where, you know, there's a love-hate relationship.
Right.
No, but he's a great boss.
Yeah, right.
He it's not his first rodeo. When you see bands of from the same era, that you need 5 of these bands to go play a 500-seat club somewhere, you have this guy who's still selling out arenas and stadiums. So he obviously knows what he's doing.
Right. Well, yeah, he had a lot of drive, and I was kind of there from the day that Runaway came out, you know, to today. Wow. So I watched his entire, his whole trajectory the whole time, you know, just like you have. I mean, how old are you?
I'm 56.
All right, so you're just a couple of years older than me. I'm 54. So we're from the same.
Yeah, I just won the hair lottery.
You did. You lucky dog. So anyway, since this is all about Van Halen, and we're going to get into that. Let me go back one thing real quick. Fred, when you did the Fred and Americana videos, that's what I saw. This leads into what I was going to say about Eddie Van Halen. What I got from that, in fact, the one that I saw was the Fire video. Jimi Hendrix, of course. It's one of your big ones. Right, one of your big ones, right? So you're like throwing the guitar around, and there's just this like overwhelming joy that's going on in your video by yourself in the room with your guitar. And it was so awesome. I took it to my wife, and I said, look at this guy. I didn't even know you then, but I was like, look at this guy. And she was like, wow. I was like, yeah, I'll have what he's having. So anyway, I saw that video, and I heard that. Is it true that Bon Jovi saw you on that video, or how did he know about you?
No, it was first of all, there was a weird, like, people think like I was in Aldo Nova in 1990, and okay. we were on John's label, and he co-wrote and co-produced the record. So people thought there was a connection that way, but I'm going to tell you right now that he probably forgot all that.
Sure.
And because he meets like 1 million people every year, and probably forgot about that Phil X. And then John Shanks, who wrote with John and produced a couple of records for Bon Jovi, a few. He's a collector, so he was looking for a Les Paul. And I guess at one point, if you looked for a Les Paul, I had one of my videos at least came up in the top 3. So then he went down the rabbit hole of Phil X on Fred and Americana, and then he had a studio at Henson Studios in LA, and I was at Henson Studio in Room D recording for a project, and he found me and he said, dude, you are one fucking funny motherfucker. And I'm like, what? And he's like, well, no, I couldn't stop watching your videos last night. I was like, must have been like 4 or 5 hours, and it sounds like you can play and sing anything. And then at the same time, John Bon Jovi called John Shanks and said, I might need a guy. Who do you think, everybody, who do you think could fill in for Richie if I needed to get a guy to fill in for Richie? And John Shanks just said, I think this is the guy. I can't stop watching his videos, and he seems like a really cool dude. And I met him at Henson. He's even worked on some Bon Jovi stuff when nobody was looking. And I think this is the guy. So, and that's how it happened, you know. John Shanks called me 2 weeks later and said, I think I have a gig for you. And I'm like, oh, cool. What is it? He goes, I can't tell you over the phone. You come by my studio tomorrow. And when I went to the studio the next day, he presented me with a contract and a statement of confidentiality and no audition, no nothing. Done deal.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, because people, those are the two things that people ask. What was the first gig like? And then what was the audition like? You know, I didn't audition. And like, what? And then the other one is like, what's the bus like? I go, I've never seen a bus with Bon Jovi.
Right.
It's just
right.
jets.
Right, exactly. Well, John Shanks ended up being your partner. Is he still your partner?
Dude, yeah, he's my, we go on that stage and and even in the beginning, when he decided that he wanted to be in the band and John Bon Jovi was like, well, he knows that this house is not for sale front and back because he recorded it.
Sure.
He co-wrote a lot of it. He produced it. So he's the guy we should get. I'm like, oh, awesome. You know, like, because we get along. We're like brothers, but we're brothers that love each other to death and fight. But at the same time, I want to be fair. I don't think if you go and stay with Bon Jovi, it's not going to be fun if you're playing rhythm guitar all night long, right? Yeah. So I gave him some solos, you know, gave him some themes from that record. I go, you know what? I'm going to throw you a bone. Why don't you take the solo to Bad Name? That kind of thing, right? Right. And then it was a rehearsal, and John was coming to me, and I was downstairs, but he didn't see me, but I heard somebody said, why is Shanks doing so many solos? And I heard the person that I had already talked to say, well, he wants him to have fun. He doesn't want him to be like cramping up on bar chords all night. Right. You know? Right. And John's like, oh, well, that's cool. Okay, let's do it. So everybody is a team and everybody wants it to be the best it can be. And that's how it works, man. That when you're a team and everybody's looking out for each other, and we're a gang, man. You get into a fight with one of us, you're going to be in a fight with all of us. That kind of thing. So going into the Van Halen stuff, we were talking about your attitude. You know, I've heard you talk about this a little bit, but your work ethic. You know, going back to when you were young and the whole thing that led you to where you are today. But this thing that Eddie Van Halen had that we all kind of picked up on was this the joy for the music, the smile, all that. You know what? I feel as many people that get it, I'm shocked at the amount that don't. Don't get what? Like if you get like super serious and concentrate and try to nail every note, you're missing the point. Yeah. You know, because the joy Ed had on his face. And you know what? You know, you said I'm older than you. I saw the Women and Children First tour when I was 14 in Toronto, Canada at Maple Leaf Gardens. And that was my first Van Halen show. And I was blown away. And then now, you know, losing Ed was such a devastating thing in our worlds, but so much Ed Van Halen material surfaced. It was unbelievable. Photos and videos and this and that, and you lose your mind. And it's like, oh my God, that's Toronto, Canada, because he's wearing the blue jumpsuit that he wore when I saw him on the Women and Children First tour. He was playing the guitar. Holy shit! And having flashbacks is like, it changed my life. It wasn't just Ed being the best guitar wizard that anybody ever heard. It was him doing all that and sprinting across the stage like a superhero. The only thing missing was a cape. It was like 4 superheroes exploding on a stage. And I'm like, this is rock and roll. This sets the bar. Any band that doesn't do this doesn't mean it. Right. That's me being a 14-year-old. And then being able to, you know, hammer out Mean Street and Eruption and, you know, playing Battle of the Bands and doing all that stuff. That only lasted for a short while because, okay, dude, there's already an Eddie Van Halen. Right. You don't want to be a copycat. And that's when I stopped tapping. And that's when I try to use the bar a little different. And I kind of came up with my own bar that was very different. And just, you know, it just seemed to me like, what can I do that'll, you know, follow the footsteps, but not be a copycat? Like, that's when I wanted to have a guitar that looked like, hey, that's Phil X's guitar, not, you know, oh, it's Stripes. Okay, Eddie Van Halen, woohoo! Oh, you're tapping, Eddie Van Halen, woohoo! It's I mentioned this before too. It's like, no, everybody hated the whammy pedal until Tom Morello put it on Rage Against the Machine 1. Right. And then everybody wanted the whammy pedal. You know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. And now when you hear a whammy pedal, it reminds you of Killing in the Name of. It's all the same stuff, right? But for me, it was like, you know, with Eddie Van Halen, it was like, I wanted to have that joy. I wanted it to be present. I wanted to have that smile that was infectious. And then playing, it just fell into place. I came up with this thing called Conquer the Lick, where I would come up with the stupidest licks that I couldn't even play, but I wouldn't put the guitar down until I mastered that lick. And then it was another lick, and then it was another lick. And then all of a sudden I had all these licks. And then I go, what can I do about my picking that nobody else is doing? And I grew up with Greek music playing around the house all the time. And then I took a bunch of bouzouki lessons. And then all of a sudden I'm getting together with all the guys that we would sit down and jam, and my picking would be like crazy. And they're like, whoa, what just happened? I'm like, what? Your picking is so, you know, it was so articulate and so precise and so much attack that these guys were like floored, and they're like, your picking is outrageous. What'd you do? I go, I took some bouzouki lessons. But when you apply the clarity that you need to play to sound like a master on a bouzouki, there's no distortion to hide your flaws. There's no room for error. There's no forgiveness. So when you take that and apply it to an easier instrument like a guitar, bam, everybody's like, what the hell? So, and it's funny because I was familiar with the songs that I was learning, and because I grew up listening to them. My dad was a huge fan of Manolis Chiotis, who even Jimi Hendrix mentions in an old interview.
Wow.
And when I started learning all his stuff, it was like, man, doing this on bouzouki is so hard, but doing it on guitar is a piece of cake. And then you can throw your licks into the bucket of stuff, right, and bam, it's this new kid on the block. But that wasn't new. I was still a kid because I was maybe 17, 18 at the time. People started like freaking out. So it was really cool. And trying to not make my licks or let my licks sound like Eddie Van Halen or Randy Rhoads or anybody I was listening to, Lee Roth, that kind of stuff, you know, all that stuff was kind of like in my cup and just dipping into the colors and putting my palette to use. Yeah. And that's the best way I can describe it. But man,
yeah, I've watched how you reinterpret, you know, how you reinterpret, kind of like you did that thing where you reinterpreted Eruption, but not tapped, right? You know,
well, that was later on in life, man. That was like getting bored or hitting a plateau. And what can I work on today? Okay, well, what would it be like if I did the tapping part in Eruption without tapping? And then I figured out the triads, and this works, and my hands hate doing this, but I'll just work on it for a little bit and give it some time. And then bam, I got that. And then I take that and turn it into a whole piece that I play in Phillips and the Drills with a cleaner tone and no phase. And it's a piece that I play as Phil X, but I quote a little Eruption in it, and I quote a little Randy Rhoads in it. I mean, quotes are what make it playing lead guitar fun.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, right.
And that's where the joy is, you know. And and even songwriters say good songwriters borrow, great songwriters steal. If you're a guitar player, you want to disguise it. Right. It's all about the disguise.
Yeah. So going back to your youth, though, what was the first thing you knew about Van Halen at all? Like, when's the first thing that you heard or saw or whatever? Eddie Van Halen.
Well, a cassette of Van Halen 1 in my cousin's basement, and he played the song. I didn't know I was listening to it when I heard Running with the Devil. Never heard a guitar like that. Never heard a vocal like that. I mean, there was Ian Gillan and there was other guys that would rock, but what Dave did with all his influences, and it just became Dave. There was nothing like that. And then the backgrounds with Michael Anthony, fierce. And you learn why they were so good at it, because they would do like R&B tunes in the cover band and they would emulate the horn section. So bam, that's why that makes sense. After Running with the Devil, then you hear Eruption. And I'm like everybody else that thought, is that a violin? Is that an organ? Is that a synth? What the hell is that? Because nobody could even imagine what the hell that was. Like, so I'm in that group of people that were like, oh my God. So it's hard for the people that have been watching it for years to actually even mentally try to digest that. That could you imagine that nobody else was doing that, and then all of a sudden it was in your face, even in You Really Got Me. Yeah. The second lick, you're like, what? He goes from Chuck Berry to that, and you're like, what the? It's like, and the funny thing is about him is that's so amazing is that he just, like I'm saying, all the stuff that surfaced, it's unbelievable. Like if you can go on YouTube and find a solo from the board tape from this gig, and he's doing his solo, and it's pre-tapping and pre-whammy bar, and it's probably a Les Paul or the Shark before he turned into the Shark, and he's blazing. Right. Blazing. Even then, anybody in that room is going, what the fuck is this guy doing? And where's that sound coming from? And holy shit, like all that stuff to happen all in when Van Halen was playing clubs and honing in on their craft, and it to get to that point of how could you not take over the world? Like, really?
Right. Well, like that video that we were talking about the other day, the one that just hit, the 78 video, we were going back and forth.
Same thing. And so this is what I was mentioning to you in my text. Okay, so before the Niagara Falls show, there was the Fresno show, right? Fresno, somebody took the camera and linked it up to. Yeah. Okay, so check this out. My theory, I had this theory because, like the black and white guitar, that's like beside your right shoulder there. Right. Oh, you're in stereo.
I'm double, buddy.
That guitar, right? That he wanted it to be what it was. So he does Eruption and then changes to the Shark. And immediately my ear goes, oh my God. He said that he ruined the sound of the Shark by putting that bite in it.
Right.
That, to me, to my ear, the Shark sounded way better and way bigger than that early Franken-SG. Right? I was like, wow. But then
you did. I mean, obviously, that it was played a lot on Van Halen 1, the Shark.
No, obviously, yeah. But check this out, and you can hear it too when you listen to the end of Eruption, and then You Really Got Me kicks in. You go, that's a fatter guitar. Right. But here's the thing: on the recent interview that was just put out, when he's a kid backstage at a festival, and he's talking about this, and I go, oh yeah, after I do my Eruption thing, I change to the Shark guitar, and that's the B rig.
Right.
So then I think about Fresno, and I'm thinking, wait a minute. Maybe the Shark doesn't sound that much better than the black and white. Maybe the B rig that night sounded better than the A rig.
Yeah,
and this is why all these variables will drive us fucking crazy until the end of time.
Right. I know. We were, it's just nuts how many, and the white Les Paul was in that video. We were talking about that. You know,
Love that. I love that with that Les Paul, man. You blew your face off without a whammy bar, and unbelievable, man. And the sound too, obviously.
oh
You
yeah,
know.
the sound is insane. So you're how old in '80 or '14? You said when you see them in '80. Tell me about that show.
Well, it just seemed I didn't know what I was seeing. It was just so outstanding, and I was flabbergasted by the whole uh, thing. It was one of my first concerts. I think I saw Cheap Trick first, and they were awesome.
Right, right.
And then a month later, I go see Van Halen, and I'm like, wait a minute. Like it's hard to swallow what you're seeing. It's hard to like, how is this even happening? Like these guys are, they're all jumping all over the way the PA is stacked. This is before everything was flown, right?
Yeah, yeah.
They're
Right.
jumping on the giant speakers and they're running back down and running across the stage. And I was there when Ed was sliding on his knees all night. And I was there. So, because I saw after that Fair Warning, and I remember the moves from Center Swing when he played that. And I remember him doing one Saturday Afternoon in the Park, or the prelude to One Foot Out the Door. Mm-hmm. And then I remember Diver Down when he wrecked his hand on a bike or something and was wearing a tensor bandage and still playing his face off and kicking the cabinets, and they're going doing this thing. Right. You know, there's guys back there holding it. Don't let it fall. Right. But he would still kick it and turn around real quick to make sure it wasn't falling on him while he was playing blistering stuff, dude. And then I saw 1984,
right,
and all that stuff with the wooden cutting board shelf thing that he could do this. I mean, I saw all that when I was a kid firsthand, you know? I mean, to be alive and witnessing all that, how could you not think this guy was an alien, or definitely from another world and not Holland? Definitely grew up way different than anybody else. Like this guy was from another world. And that's why me and my other friends, we call ourselves the Disciples of Ed. And we throw, hey man, check this out. And I should send the video. And we all have, we have our own little idiosyncrasies, and you know, I do this way, you do it that way, but we both think we're right, and that kind of shit. Right. And then Charlie Starr sent me a video of him playing the solo to Somebody Get Me a Doctor. And I'm like, oh, that's the lick. And I'm like, and then, oh, dude, now you gotta show me that lick, because I've been doing it wrong for 40 years. You know?
Right.
And he shows me the lick, and then I can't stop doing it. I'm doing it everywhere. I'm like, I'm doing Somebody Get Me a Doctor all the time. Even I was on tour with Kurt Daimler in October, and that was a tour. We were opening for Drowning Pool, but for Halloween we opened up for another band in Ohio. And they unloaded the trailer, and I took my little Parker Fly and I put it near the phone, and I'm playing my Flying V because it's the only guitar tuned to E flat. Right. And I do so right then and there, like as recent as Halloween, in the back of a trailer that's been emptied out. And I gotta say this too. There's a lot of thing about the joy of Eddie Van Halen, but there's a lot of thing that his hands did that a lot of people don't understand. You can play the right notes, but it doesn't make it right.
Right. Like your video about the King of Swing, right? Your video that you talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, there's something in that DNA, and a lot of people will chime in, and a lot of it is, yeah, of course, there's reasons. you know, he grew up with his dad playing clarinet and sax in a swing band. His brother also had the same kind of shuffle and stuff like this. If you slow all that stuff down, it's ZZ Top. But they just transform it into ZZ Top on speed and adrenaline and at some point cocaine, and you know, it's all
1984.
that stuff dancing around, right?
Right. That's wild. You know, my whole world was changed by one video by Van Halen. That was Unchained. The Unchained video. I saw it on Don Kirshner's rock concert when I was a child. Yes. You know, 20-inch, 19-inch CRT TV, flipping the channels because we didn't have a remote control. And then David Lee Roth was on there on an interview with Jim Ladd, and they introduced the song. And wow. I was like, what the hell is this? And that tour, man, and that whole stage setup has just become like the thing for me, man. It's just, I even have an Instagram called Forever Unchained 1981. That's fine.
And it's funny, right? Because they're having so much fun that Ed goes into the verse early.
Right.
And it comes back to the intro, and then they go in the verse together. So that stuff, for me, is what made them real, you know, and they never took anything too seriously, and they never, and this is the thing with Eddie and Dave is that they were constantly trying to cock block each other, you know, they're trying to, and I think that's what made the fire of early Van Halen so evident, because they're butting heads and probably at one point going, fuck you, I'm the fucking band, and fuck you, I get all the chicks, and fuck you, I'm the best guitar player in the world. So when they take that energy on stage, how is it not going to be like, what's going on? You know, how is it not going to be like that? Right. So that's, to me, that's where the fire came from for that early rendition of the band.
And they were like 27, 28 years old, and they're 25 to 27. They were young and just
unbelievable,
hungry, just insane. Definitely. So there's the famous Phil X meetings with Eddie Van Halen. I heard you say it's like 3 or 4 times.
It was 3 times. Well, actually, I mean, the first time was actually at his house.
Oh wow!
There was a party.
Oh, the 2006 party, the backyard party.
And I gotta be honest. It was a low point in his life.
Right.
And at 8 o'clock at night, he was obliterated, but by whatever he had been drinking. Mm-hmm. And I'm at Eddie Van Halen's house on Eddie Van Halen's back porch, watching Eddie Van Halen on stage with the jam band. And my buddy Brian Tichy, Eric Dover was there. I know these guys.
Yep. And Eric Dover's a Birmingham boy too. He's one of my buddies back there.
No, he's an amazing singer, amazing player.
Yeah, he is. Love that guy.
And my heart broke.
Yeah.
I don't care what anybody says. I was on that balcony and my heart broke because he was so not the guy I grew up with.
Sure.
And he was mumbling into the microphone and tripping over his cable and trying to do Cathedral. And literally, I could see that he wasn't tuning up the guitar enough to do Cathedral, but he's yelling at the monitor guy because, hey, this is your fault. It was a very angry, non-joyous Eddie Van Halen.
Right.
And other people, Brian had an amazing time. He was on stage with this hero and he thought it was fantastic. Me watching it from 20 feet away, I was walking out and he was sitting at the piano in his foyer. Mm-hmm. And he would literally and you know what? I felt bad for the guy because everybody's standing around the piano going, Ed, trying to get a picture of him, right? But his hair's in his face, and he would play something on the piano, and you'd go, what the fuck was that? And then he'd shy away, and then he'd set the piano and do something else, and you'd go, holy shit. But I didn't want to be I didn't have someone on the inside to introduce me or anything like that. So I'm like, I'm gonna leave with that because that was amazing, and I'm gonna go. And then the second time we actually spent some time, it was at Studio B in Henson, where before John Shanks started producing a simple kind of truth, a different kind of truth. Right. Patrick Leonard was in the hat. His name was in the hat to produce, and he had produced some tracks with the brothers. And Patrick was like, hey, can you come listen to something for me? And I'm like, sure. And he's like, I go into the studio, and he's go, we just recorded a bed tracks for a song. I go, what band? He goes, Van Halen. I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, and this is just guitar and bass. This is the brothers on the floor. We lay down to some rhythm tracks, and then, but I need your opinion on the solo. And I'm like, okay. So he goes, so I gotta preface this. Ed was like, Pat, I don't know what I'm doing. I haven't soloed in a really long time. It's actually been a long time since I even played. So let's just do a couple of solos and stuff like that and see what happens. So he goes, so what do you like? This is solo 2. Listen to that. This is solo 3. He's like, and then he looks at me, and I have a terrible poker face, right? I can't really lie, right? And he's like, you don't look, let's put it this way, you look a little underwhelmed. And I'm like, can I hear the first solo? He goes, yeah, hey, Ross. My buddy Ross Hogarth was engineering. Put up the first solo. So he puts up the first solo, and now my eyes widen. And I'm like, he's like, what's up? I go, that's the solo, dude. He wasn't thinking. He was just doing. He was just playing. It was the first one he did. It was before he got in his head about I'm Eddie Van Halen. I got to impress people. He just played without, and it was amazing. That's the solo. Yeah. And he's like, wow, Ross, what do you think? He goes, yeah, I thought it was too, but it's great to hear a guitar player say so. So that was really cool. So then I think it was the same week that Patrick was walking by the studio while I was recording something with the Tone Master. And he just came right in and he goes, what app is that? Oh, that's my Tone Master from the 50s. And he's like, do you mind if we're looking for a different sound for this one song. Do you mind if I get Ed to come and listen to this amp? And I'm like, Ed. He goes, Van Halen. He's like, hey, Ed, it's Pat. I'm at Henson, man. Can you come down here? Oh, you're in the middle of something. That's cool. Can you come by tomorrow? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, cool if Ed comes by tomorrow. I'm like, okay, sure. I'm like, wow, okay. And he goes, yeah, he's changing the shower nozzle in his wife's shower. So he's doing that. He's going to come tomorrow. And I'm like, what? How is this happening? So now I'm on pins and needles the entire day. Guys, we can work up until 2:30. And from 2:30 to 3 o'clock, I got to get ready to meet him. So if you guys don't mind, let's quit for lunch. You guys go have lunch. I'll mentally prepare for this moment. And at 3 o'clock, Ed's walking in. And they're like, yeah, that's cool. It was Kenny Aronoff on drums. It might have been Chris Chaney on bass, but I don't know if he was there that day. Roger Manning from Jellyfish on keys. That was the band. So cool band.
Yeah, right.
Anyways, so I'm sitting I don't want to miss him walking in, right? So I'm sitting on the bench. I'm like a kid, right? This is like Santa Claus coming. And so he walks in with 2 hard shell cases himself. Nobody with him. 2 hard shell cases. And I'm like, wow. He goes, you Phil? I'm like, yeah. He's like, yeah, Pat told me to come and meet you and listen to this amp. I'm going, yeah, right this way. Walk in. Like, and I think he said I'm Eddie Van Halen kind of thing. I'm like, have you ever had to announce who you are since the beginning of Van Halen ever? But okay, I get it. So we walk in the back. And he didn't bring a tech or anything. He was just, and he opens up both cases, and one is a Franken-SG with a wolfy neck.
Right.
And the other one is a Ripley Telly.
Okay. The natural one. There's a natural one, right?
Bizarre. Well, bizarre, right?
Right.
So what am I plugging into? I go, this amp right here. And he goes, okay, cool. So he plugs in, give him the line, and he's got the Franken-SG with the wolfie. I go, dude, a Franken-SG with a wolfy neck. He goes, yeah, I'm a tinkerer. I'm like, yeah, I know. And I'm just witnessing this firsthand, right? So he starts playing, and he's like, what is that thing? I go, it's an old Tone Master from the 50s, from Illinois. And he goes, I got 100 of those in a garage. And I'm like, yeah, but this one's kind of special. You know, I don't know if it's because the speaker's almost falling apart, but when I crank it this way and with that guitar, you're going to get some really nice squishy vibe. And he started playing. He goes, interesting. And he's playing. And I go, you should try it with this overdrive pedal. And he goes, I don't use overdrive pedals. And if it was anybody else, I would have said, don't be a fucking idiot. Try with pedal. But it was David Lee Roth. So what am I going to say?
Right.
So it was at this moment that we just started talking about stuff. I think I heard about this garage. You got 100 plexis, 100 twins, 100, now you have 100, Tone Masters. And he goes, yeah, I like to collect stuff and that kind of thing. So we were shooting the shit a little bit. So what are you doing here? I go, I play guitar. I'm, just playing guitar on this project. And, I try to change up the sound. So I bring like 4 or 5 amps. I got my Marshall JMP from 76. I got this amp. I got that amp. And this is the Tone Master. I use it on overdubs because it just sits. You could record 2 Marshall stacks, and if you put more Marshall on there, everything gets lost. But if you put a Tone Master on top of it for the overdub, it sings. And he's like, wow, that's cool. And at that moment, my phone rang, and my ring's been unchained for like 20 years. Right. So I get the Unchained is just blaring out of my phone in the live room of Studio B, and I get the big giant Eddie Van Halen smile and goes, nice ringtone.
Right on, man.
And then we took some pictures, and Kenny came, and he went over and gave Kenny a big hug, and he gave Roger was like, hey man, I'm in this band. I used to be in this band, Jellyfish. We were really inspired by Van Halen and stuff. I mean, you probably don't hear it, but we've always been kind of, so everybody was kind of blown away by this. His presence is amazing, right? So that was basically it, maybe 30, 45 minutes.
Let me ask you this before you move on. Everybody talks, and you said this earlier, I think you said this in a different interview. You said he had a light right hand.
Yeah.
But a lot of people say it's a heavy right hand. What did you see?
Light. Okay. See, this is the thing. And I think the funny thing is about his hands is that it sounds like the attack is crazy, but it really isn't. Because and his legato, his left hand is so strong that sometimes when he's doing pull-offs, it sounds like he's picking, but he's not. So to me, it's all in the sound that he had. The sound was so aggressive and so bitey that he could just flow, and it sounds like he's picking really hard. To me, always sounded to me like, okay, it sounds like he's so aggressive. It's aggressive. And then the more I picked it apart, and I go, wow, even the chicken, when you're playing Running with the Devil, even that little chicken in there, even with that little chicken, it sounds more accurate when you back off on the attack.
Okay.
So it's stuff like that. But when I saw him play, really, it cemented the whole thing. This guy, The way he's playing right now, he just plays. And then when he's playing chords, because he's tuned a certain way and he's using 9 of 42s for the longest time, sometimes he'll pick really light right at the bridge where there's less chance of going out of tune. And I even saw that when I saw him play live when I was a kid. I'm like, wow, he's playing really, he hits really light, really close to the bridge. So when he hits like, and even Unchained, the D chord in Jamie's Crying, he's almost, it's not a mute. It's like a half mute or something that's happening with those chords sometimes. And I just, that's why I say a lot of people when they wind out and play hard, that's why it doesn't sound right to me. Because I always think that.
Yeah, that's been a big thing. Like I've heard so many, Brad Tolinski and Chris Gill, of course, have been close to him too, while he plays. And I, from a player standpoint, I wanted to see what you saw because you were there. I mean, obviously taking it all in. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing that you're able to have that kind of close up. Now, did he play acoustically on his electric at any point?
No.
Okay, so you didn't hear that. Okay.
No. And he didn't even pick up the Ripley. He was just playing a little bit and trying out little riffs. And he might have been looping the riff that they're going to record for the next song or something to just really hear the amp. Because Patrick was really all about that amp. And I don't think he really got the same excitement that he had the same excitement about the amp that Patrick did. But it was just being there was pretty amazing. And then when I walked him out, and then we went back to work, and you could tell I was walking on cloud 9. It was like you met Jesus, back in the day. And it was like, wow, what the hell? It's like my mind's going, and now, oh yeah, we got to work, right? I need a minute. I'm gonna go get a sandwich and a coffee, I'll come back. And because it was that identifiably insanity for me to be in that situation, And then when I was doing more work at Henson when they were working on the record with John Shanks. And this is a moment where this is way before, no, we had spoken, but this is before the Bon Jovi thing happened, where we run into the hall and he goes, dude, I gotta tell you what Ed just did. Like Ed had this thing, like sometimes he felt like insecure about his playing, but other times John Shanks is like, hey, that's a cool lick. I'm going to steal it. And Ed would go, good luck.
Right.
You know what I mean? He had that Edism, but it wasn't always that way,
Right.
So it's pretty amazing. Like, but how much of a mind trip would that be if you were that guy that everybody just stopped and wanted a piece of all the time? You know what I mean? That's got to be a tough life.
I was going to ask you about that because, I with Brad Tolinski and Chris, since they were at 5150 a lot, I was trying to get down to that what that was like for him to deal with. A lot of people have told me he used to try to go out into the public and he'd get hammered, and even in LA or down the street from his house or whatever, and it just was, constant. So he seemed good with people always, but then the other part of it is I always thought, well, maybe he feels trapped up at 5150, this, like he can't go anywhere. He can't do anything.
Well, I heard stories from legitimate and reliable sources that to take a break, he would throw his mini bike into the back of his Jeep and go down to the Ralph's at Coldwater Canyon and Ventura Boulevard, and he would ride his mini bike in the parking lot. And then he would come back scraped up because he took a spill. Oh. I had stories like that. But I mean, it's crazy when you think about it. I was up at 5150 Studio hanging out with Matt Bruck one time because he asked me to do something for the 5150 overdrive pedal.
All right.
And I went up to the studio. He goes, hey, come by, man. I'd love to meet you here and show you around and all that stuff. And they take you into the back vault where you're looking at 2-inch tape boxes that say ain't talking about love and shit like that. And you're like, oh. And this is the drum room and this is the amps. Oh, here's the stealth he used on the last tour. Check it out. I'm like, and you want to play, but you don't want to play. What do you do? should I take a picture? Because I don't want to play it right now. It's that kind of, I mean, people are like, what are you talking about? Why didn't you just fucking plug in a whale? And I'm like,
right. Could you even tell how it was set up when you held it?
You know what? He went from really, like, when I checked out the Ernie Ball when it came out, it had pretty high action, and the action lowered and lowered and lowered as the models went on. So his stealth from the prior tour, it was really low action.
Yeah.
So, I mean, everybody should go through phases and changes and stuff like that, you know. But for me, you know, as much as he says he was a tone chaser, I'm like, you had it, man. In '82, you had it. Why you didn't have to change a thing.
Right.
You know? So, but obviously, an artist is an artist, and a lot of genius artists are, you know, they have that chip missing where they've arrived. So he was constantly trying to get it better and stuff like that. But, you know, it's funny. In the first reunion with Dave, it wasn't quite there. So when I went to the friend and family party,
yeah,
and it just felt like, you know, and they got the big screen and you're seeing him play, and I was like, you know, like I could see, I know he's playing so well that I saw him go for licks and bail on the lick and just do a horsey or something.
Right.
And I kind of felt like, oh man. And I kind of felt disappointed, but at the same time, you're kind of in the moment because you're watching it at a friend and family show and you're hearing all the songs and you just let that go. And it was the first tour that Wolfie did on bass, and you're just, okay, let it all go and just enjoy, you know, and then I could enjoy it, and it was great. The second run, his playing was on. It was so, but even he said, see, I met him in between, and even he said, oh yeah, back when I was sober and not sober. The next run, he was sober completely.
08 or 12? 2008 or 12, because he did two runs in 07, 08. He did like a 07, 08 tour, and then he had 2012.
Well, 2012 was supporting the record, right?
Yeah, that's right.
That's when he was on the money.
Yeah.
07, 08, that's when he was saying he did the quotation signs for sober, because apparently everybody thought he was sober, but it really wasn't. But he was sober, and it's just unbelievable. Like, I was just and Dave was so bad. It's like when Eddie wasn't himself, Dave was on, and then when Eddie was himself, Dave was off.
Yeah, because Dave was pretty good in 07 and 08. I mean, yeah. I saw that 4 times that year.
Then with the dance floor and the Brittany mic and the jazz hands, I'm like, oh my God. And singing, you know, it's funny because they made fun of Journey back in the day, but he started turning Van Halen songs into Journey. You can't get romantic on a subway line. Stop. What the hell was that?
Yeah, I know that. What was with all the melodic changes? I mean, what do you think? Was his voice just got a hole in a range, or what?
I don't know, man.
It's just crazy.
I want that to be my comment on Dave. That's it. He started singing happy melodies where it was just piss and vinegar, and maybe the piss and vinegar is gone and he wants to sing melodies. I don't know. But when you make everybody want something like Journey, it's not a good thing for anyone, let alone the guy who co-wrote it and performed it for a million years. So I don't know. I mean, it's a tough one, but I just, I'm going to get a lot of haters for this.
No, you go. These people love.
But, okay, so the third time that I met Ed,
yeah.
I went to see Tremonti because my buddy said, hey, come and see Tremonti. And Wolfie's actually playing bass. And it's at the Roxy. And I got tickets and we'll just go hang out. So I'm looking around. And my buddy Ross, who mixed a different kind of truth, came up to the red rope and said, Phil, I'm sitting with Ed. Come say hi. And I was like, and it was like the first time, right? It was like, because all the Henson thing wasn't in my brain. It was being at his house wasn't in my brain. It was Ed at the Roxy watching Wolfie play bass for Tremonti. And I go, let me come when the show's over so I can, really talk, I don't want to, hey, he's watching his son play bass. I don't want to be the guy going, hey, so, when you do this thing, are you doing a downstroke or an upstroke?
Right.
So they're done. I think they did 2 sets because it was in between. So I went over and Ross literally said, Ed, this is my buddy Phil, amazing guitar player. He came to LA and slept on my couch, and now he plays on everybody's record. And I thought, wow, you can't beat an intro like that to the king, right?
Right. Wow.
So I put my hand out. He gave me the giant Eddie Van Halen smile, and his hand was bigger than mine. Like I'm 6 feet, and his hands belong on a 6'4" person. His big hands. He put his big warm hand in took my hand in his big warm hand, and I was like, I was shocked. I didn't know what to say. I just said, "You're the king."
Is that what you really said?
That's what I really said, and he laughed. You don't want to know what I did?
Oh yeah, I want to
know. I put that hand in my pocket and didn't pull it out for the rest of the night. People come, Phil, what's happening? Sorry, man, I'm giving you the gay laugh because I just shook Eddie Van Halen's hand.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, people talk about meetings, talk about jamming with, and I've talked to people that jam with him and stuff like that. I never got to play with him, and that's one of the things that's tough. But just meeting him and just being around that, it's glorious. You know what I mean? Like, this guy changed my life as a youngin', like a 14, 15, and continuing to change my life. Even now, when I see something surface, like we're talking about these videos, but just, you still go, this is why this kid at 23, 24, this is why he changed the world.
Yeah.
The proof hits you every day. And that's why it will never change. There will never be another, ever. I don't care if you can play Eddie Van Halen to a T with your feet. There will never be another.
That's right.
Ever. So, I mean, that's why I'm glad to be here, Jeff. I really am. I'm really glad that you asked me to come on. And there's 2 other things. Like, people always call how Ed kept his trem in tune, but he really didn't. He had tricks. Right. Like there's okay, so like it was like if even when they do like 5 takes of I'm the One,
right,
and it's a composite of those 5 takes.
Sure, yeah.
It's still a motherfucking masterpiece. Right?
Right.
If you listen to that isolated track from top to bottom, it's a masterpiece. There's no other word to describe it. It's a masterpiece. It's like the groove, the licks, the parts, this, the that, stuff that you don't hear that when it's in the track, like when he does the pre-chorus, and he go, he only picks and slides every other note, right? And you don't hear that in the band. So we're being able to hear that is a gift to us. Being able to hear that isolated. Those are my thoughts. Is him recording that at that age and doing all that stuff. And it's mind blowing. When you think about him never playing the same thing twice, that's another thing too, right?
Oh, Jesus.
Okay, so it's the whammy board thing. Okay, it's the whammy board thing.
Okay.
So, and this is where I thought it, and he even talked about it in one interview. I don't know, but he talked about how he had to, if he bent the G note, the G string, he had to actuate the bar so it would go back in tune. And the same thing, if he dropped the bar, he had to bend the G string up. So when he's playing on Fire and he live, like Pasadena Civic Center. Oh, I'm a little loud. You go,
right, exactly.
You heard that. And
right.
then I'm like, what? Oh, right. That's what we talked about that. And the other thing too was Dave's talking to the audience and he hits a chord and the G's out a little bit. And he goes, and then it's in.
Right.
And you're like, he had to fight that fucker like a boxer in a ring. He had to fight that trem to stay in tune. He had all these tricks and shit. So when the Floyd became a thing, it only made sense that. And then he had problems with the first one, and it was his idea to do the fine tuners. And because he built those guitars, and sometimes the neck wasn't tight enough. So if you're locked and there's no fine tuners, and you're jumping around the way he jumped around, and the neck would shift, you're way the fuck out. So, and then you'd have to find the spot, pull on the neck and the horn. Oh, there it is. It's back in. And that's when he said, "You need fine tuners on this thing, man. Come on."
I asked Brad Gillis that question because he uses the old one still.
He still loves it. And I had the same conversation. I go, "Man, no fine tuners." He goes, "I love this thing. I got it down and I love it." He probably told you the same thing, right?
Yeah, he did, but he didn't tell me how he made it work.
These guys got secrets.
Well, like you're talking about with the regular trim, he figured out a way to get his way, get around that thing.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, totally. So one of the things that goes back to like Bon Jovi with Van Halen is that Bon Jovi was the headliner for in Europe in '95, and Van Halen opened. What does John Bon Jovi have any his things he shared with you about that time?
Not really. Who did? Somebody did. Hugh did.
Okay.
Wait, what year was that?
95.
95.
They went to Europe and they supported Bon Jovi on that tour. Van Halen did.
Yeah. Oh, good. You know what it was though? Bon Jovi just everywhere exploded. Van Halen, not so much in Europe.
Right.
That's what they were saying, because they'd be talking about it and joking, and they're, well, Van Halen opened up for us. I go, what?
Right.
I'm like, wait, what? What year was that? What? He goes, oh yeah, man, because we had the biggest record in Europe. So, and they didn't, so they opened. I'm like, wow, man, that's crazy. But could you imagine trying to follow that band?
Right.
Good luck. And apparently it was fine. John was probably at the top of his game, and the band was probably smoking from playing so much. They toured so much.
Sure. How many dates are you guys doing now?
It wasn't a lot. You know what? In 2013 was the most we did in a year. We did John was the one, he'd hit me. We'd get on the jet and he'd look at me and go, hey man, it's show 85 for you. I'm like, what? He goes, I'm counting. Because we didn't know if Richie was coming back. We didn't know if he was not coming back. We didn't know anything. But John would just look at me every day and go, it's at show 85, show 86, show 90 today. I'm like, wow, this guy's keeping on top of it, right? And then when I'd worked on This House Is Not For Sale, and we did a promo tour in 2016 at the end. And then when we did the touring for that record to support it, I don't know if it's John's decision or a team decision saying, hey, instead of disappearing for 2 years, the climate has changed a lot lately. Let's do 3 months in 2017, and then we'll do 3 months in 2018, and then we'll do 3 months in 2019, and just tour over the 3 years and cover all. So in 2008, 17 and 18, we would do the spring months in the US and Canada. And then in 17, we did South America, Rock in Rio, which is pretty amazing, and Chile and Argentina. And then in 2018, in the fall months, we did the spring months again were the US or Canada, and in the fall months was Japan and Australia. And in 2019, we did Europe, and we started in Russia, did the UK, Wembley Stadium, 82,000 people, pretty amazing. Julie Roth came to the Liverpool show and gave me a Sky guitar.
Oh, did he? That's a killer guitar.
And I used it for Runaway a couple of times and for Raise Your Hands a couple of times. It really takes getting used to with that, because where those extra frets are exactly where I pick. So I had to pick different, but I still wanted to use it. I wanted to put it on the Bon Jovi stage for him, right? And then we did Europe, and then we ended at the end of July, I believe it was, in Tel Aviv in Israel. So, and then again, the fall months, we went to Japan and South America again. So it was like, hey man, how do you feel about playing? Because I don't know, they don't tell me anything, right? How do you feel about playing Rock in Rio? I'm like, yeah, we did that in 2017. No, you're doing it again, 2019. And the cool thing about being there is the Foo Fighters played the night before.
Right.
So I befriended Pat Smear here in LA because their daughters are around the same age and have the same name, Scarlett. And then I'm like, hey man, are you guys here yet? He goes, yeah, we just got here. Meet us in the dressing room. And I go in the dressing room and spend 2 hours talking and hanging out with the Foo Fighters. But they're all asking me about Bon Jovi questions, right? So hanging out with Bon, and then they're like, okay, we're going on. Hey, we're doing a shot of Jaeger. You're gonna do it with us? I'm like, I haven't done Jaeger in I don't know how many years, but how do I say no?
Right. That's brutal.
That's the cool thing about being in the Bon Jovi thing. There's a lot of perks.
Yeah.
But
so
for sure.
So did Taylor Hawkins? Taylor Hawkins was a big Van Halen fan. Did you ever talk to him about it?
Oh yeah, we talked when he came to the studio because he played on a drills track on Stupid Good Lookings, and we were going. And Ross was engineering, so he was just, wait, you recorded Alex? He goes, well, I recorded some, but I did mix the last record. So they were talking back and forth because Alex would come by the studio where Ross was mixing to check out mixes and stuff like that. And he had a lot of questions. And it's really cool because JD, John Douglas, Tico's tech, was Alex's tech.
I think I knew that. Yeah, I heard his name before.
Yeah. And and he did Tico He teched for Tico last April. So I would show up at Bon Jovi rehearsals early and jam Van Halen, JD.
I've seen you do that though. I've seen there's been videos that float around.
A little bit, but I'm working on a bigger video.
All right.
On the last show, at Bridgestone Arena in
Nashville.
Yeah. I got Tony Bon Jovi, who does all the visual stuff for Bon Jovi. I got him to roll the cameras, and I got our front house guy to roll Pro Tools. And we did Light Up the Sky. And I listen to it now, and I'm really super proud. I'll have to send you the MP3 of just me and him, because we're building it up. I got just Scott Soto singing it, and we have a surprise bass player on it that may or may not happen. So we'll see what happens. But it's been mentioned that it's going to happen, so I'm crossing my fingers. But I'm proud. That song is unbelievable, and especially on guitar. And it's not complicated, but it's like, how do I word it? It's achieving the intended emotion from part to part.
Yeah.
And the nuances. I'm gonna send it to you as soon as we're done. I'm just gonna you'll get it. I'll get to listen to this right now. And it's funny because I've sent it to a few friends. I've sent it to Matt Brock. I've sent it to George at Way Huge, who designed all the EVH pedals with Ed. And it's like, I'm just proud that I nailed all the Ed nuances in one go.
Right.
If we did it once and then I wasn't happy, so I stopped, and then we did it again, and JD wasn't happy with the breakdown, and then the third time was one go. We both got it. It was so happy about that. But it's when you send it to some guys and they're like, man, what's with all the reverb? I'm like, well, it was in an arena.
Right.
And those are the stage mics. Those are the room mics.
It was empty too.
Your room mics are a bowl, a giant bowl. Yeah, there's a lot of reverb.
Wow. I was going to tell you about Ross Hogarth. He came to Nashville. I live in Huntsville, Alabama, which is about an hour,
Yeah.
hour and a half below.
I
And
have friends that live there.
huh?
I have friends that live there.
Okay, great. It's a pretty cool town. It's Rocket City, we call it. So I was up there at a thing that Ross did at Vintage King, and he brought in Chinatown, the multi-track. He had the multi-tracks with him, and he
Yeah.
played it. No Roth on it, but just the band. And he played it, and then he got to the solo. I don't know why I didn't realize this when I listened to the record. Maybe it was because it was soloed and I heard it more clear. But I turned to Ross and I go, "That was a one-take solo, wasn't it?" And he goes, "Yeah, it was just a one-take solo. That was the
Yeah.
solo here on Chinatown."
You know what else is about that record is that they fixed Eddie's original Marshall and brought it into the studio. So they recorded both the Marshall and both the new EVH
Good.
5153. And so they recorded both.
Right.
But when they were mixing, Ed not mixing, but when they were tracking, he liked to hear more of the EVH because it was more of what he was used to.
Right.
But if you listen to that record, I think it's Chinatown. If you listen to that record, you hear more of the Marshall in Chinatown because it sounds more open and it's breathing fire like the old school amp. So yeah, if you listen closely, my ears pick it out. I even told Ross about that. I go, "Dude, you put more Marshall on that one, didn't you?" He's like, "I honestly don't remember."
Right.
We'll hear it.
Right. Well, you've been associated with Friedman for a long time. And Dave, one time I was in Guitar Center, and the guy, we were talking about the EVH amps, and he goes, "Well, if you want the older Van Halen sound, Friedman's your amp," right? So I ended up with a small box, but you have your own amp, and your amp is it more based on a JNP? Is that right, like a 70s?
Actually, Dave himself says it's more like a hot rodded JCM 800. So I was the only guy on the planet that asked Dave Friedman for less gain.
Yeah.
So because I tried the BE 100 before the deluxe and stuff. It was the BE 100, and I plugged it in and at a rehearsal with the drills, and I was literally in awe. I was looking at Dan, my bass player. I'm like, "Is it just me, or is this like the best sounding amp you've ever heard?" He goes, I think you're right. I mean, I hear every note that you're playing, and then you can park a truck in between because it's grabbing everything. It's responding to your hands." And I go, this is the best amp I ever heard. So I called Dave and I said, "Dude, this is like the best sounding amp I've ever heard." He goes, "Well, if I did a Friedman X model, what would it have for different than the BE 100? I go, "Okay, well, let's talk about that." Because when I'm getting Van Halen and I'm getting heavy duty drills and I'm getting everything, when I turn down the gain to get more Jimmy Page or Angus Young, all that magic and wondrous joy goes away. And he goes, "Well, I can make a gain cut for you." And I mean, it's one of those things. You're in LA, I'm in LA. If we're going to do this right, come to the shop. So I come to the shop with my guitar and my cabinet, and he's got it open with components and a solder iron. Like, it's for real. And I'm hitting the E chord, and I go, "Okay, that sounds awesome. Let's get less gain." So he tries a couple of things, and how's that? I go, "It's a little muffly like this." And he goes, "Oh, let me try the same value but different material, like ceramic or something." And then he did that. I go, "That's a little abrasive." And then he's looking at it, and I'm, what's going to happen next? And he takes an alligator clip and puts it in a magic spot. I hit an E chord, and I get exactly what I want. And go, "That's it, dude." And he goes, "Oh, okay, we're done." Makes a note of it to the builder. I mean, how many people get to do that?
Right, man, that's crazy.
That's like Disneyland for guitar players, right? Right. I remember where I got a guitar made for me, I got a pickup made for me, and an amp made for me, and then somebody comes up and goes, "Man, that sounds amazing." I go, "Well, shit, everything was made for me. If it didn't sound amazing, I'd be a fucking idiot."
Well, that kind of brings up your special SG that's striped like Van Halen.
Oh man. And you know what? I don't know if you've seen the latest picture, but I put a P90 dog ear in it.
I think you did. You did
So
a video of it, didn't you, recently?
not, I don't know if I did,
Maybe.
but I have to because it's. You know what made me think about it? It was when Wolfie posted the picture of the SG that Ed used
Yeah.
on the
Dirty Movies.
30 movies for the slide part and cut that bit off. I'm like, dude, you know what? Take this. I mean, it's nice, the tribute that I wanted when Ed passed, again, devastating. But I wanted to have a tribute to him that I couldn't just buy at a store. And fortunately, I had joined with Gibson, and I literally called the head of Gibson and said, can I get a blank SG from you guys? And he's like, what do you mean blank? I go, no routes. He goes, what you got planned? Well, I have my friends that make Franken-Strats up in Canada, and I want them to make it into a Franken-Strat, but I wanted to have the Franken-Strat routes with the output and the one volume and the pickup configuration. And he goes, that sounds amazing. I'll talk to my guys. And then they did. Sent it to the guys. And obviously, because of the scale length on the Gibson is shorter, they had to condense the routes. But the routes are as accurate as you can get, aside from being a little closer together. So, and it always, I thought, you know what? This is my tribute to the King, and it's as close as a Gibson could be. But why don't I put a little more me in it and put a dog ear P90 in it? So I did that like a couple of weeks ago, and I posted a picture of it. And man, and it sounds more fiery to me because I love P90s, right? So that guitar for me it means even more now. I got to Phil Excise, the Franken-G, which I actually call the Ed G now.
I was going to ask you. That the tribute thing. You saw Wolfgang do that, right? So what did you think of that?
Yeah. What do I think of that?
Yeah. Wolfgang playing the Van Halen songs.
Oh, that's great, man. But again, there will never be another. Even with the DNA. No, I love it. I think it was great. Yeah. And you know what, man, he's so talented.
Yeah.
So talented.
He's a nice guy. I mean, I've met him once or twice.
Yeah, I haven't met him. I look forward to meeting him someday. And he seems like a really cool dude. And man, he played the shit out of those songs, and you knew it was going to be great.
Yeah. He's very aware of his father's legacy. He's very big fan. I think you know that he's a big fan. He is. I mean, there's just been a lot of pressure on him, and since he passed, and all the things that's going on with the Van Halen camp, trying to get any kind of tribute together since we haven't ever had anyone.
Yeah. But it was funny. There was one time where he was touring with Mammoth and supporting Guns N' Roses, and people were like, play Panama, play Panama, play Panama. And he goes, every post would be like, no, we're not playing Panama tonight. No, we're not playing Panama. No, we're not playing Panama. And the funny thing was, he goes, hey guys, here's the set list for tonight. Panama, 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 Panama.
I saw that.
This guy's got a sense of humor. Come on.
Right. He is great. He's a great dude. I love Wolfgang. He's a cool guy. I got to show you something. You want to see something you don't have?
Yeah.
The world's biggest Van Halen necklace ever made. Are you ready?
Yep.
Are you ready? Look at this shit.
Oh, dude.
This was a joke that my wife and one of my friends, my bass player actually, they did this to me on Halloween. They were like, you've got to have the biggest Van Halen. You are the biggest fan, at least in Alabama. Yeah. So you got to have a Van Halen necklace.
I would wear that.
I know.
But then if I wore it on stage, if I wore it on stage, I'd start jumping around and it would take my eye out.
Right? Be like Roth getting beat up by your own stunts. That's crazy. So I want to end on kind of a wrap up. You let's talk about the day you heard about his passing, And you're kind of, you kind of talked about an overview about how he's impacted everybody, but maybe a little bit more on that.
Well, it's so crazy because Rick Beato and I were working on this video, the reimagining Stairway to Heaven solo, and then I don't know. It took. I had finished mine and he had finished his really early, but it was really hard to get Eric Johnson's video in track. Not hard, it's just everybody's got lives, right? Everybody's doing stuff and he just didn't get to it. And we were eager to get it out. And I was like, man, do we need plan B? Like, should we call I don't know, Satriani or somebody? And he's like, well, no, I really want Eric to do this, so I'm gonna reach out to him one more time. And then he hits me back and goes, so okay, he said he's gonna do it on Wednesday, and then I can put it into the video by Saturday or something like that. So, but the day it comes out is the day before Ed passed.
Oh yeah, that's right. I remember that now.
And it was Rick that texted me the next morning and said Eddie died. And that was it, 2 words. And I'm like, I'm getting goosebumps. And then I was like, wait, this can't be right. And you go, are you sure? And then I'm Googling everything. I'm looking for a Wolfie post, but he didn't post anything yet. And I'm looking for a legitimate
confirmation.
So-called AD. Is it true about Ed? He goes, yeah, I just talked to Alex. And then that was it. I started bawling my eyes out. It was so it's hard to compare it to anyone, but it was like, when I was a big Beatles fan, but not like that, not in this way. So when people that were huge Beatles fans and John Lennon died, and obviously that's different, that was violent, but in Ed's case, it was an illness. And man, it's just, and you know what? You want to do stuff. You want to light a candle and put a picture up somewhere. Everybody's putting stuff at the old Pasadena address and stuff like that. And I'm like, it doesn't resolve anything for me. I got to get a guitar belt. And I'm laughing now, but that's what it meant to me. This guy meant so much to me. I want to not continue his legacy because that's, he did what he did. And like I said, there won't be another. I keep saying that, but it's just, for me, it was like, and I built another tribute to Ed before the Edgy. And that's just, now I got 2. But the Edgy is like, even when I look at it now, I go, man, it's so amazing. It's so, and you know what? I have a friend of mine built me a Bumblebee that's way more accurate than the.
I know who that is. You know why I know who that is? John Gentileschi, right?
Gentileschi, yeah.
You know why? Because John Gentileschi was one of the first people to put out some sort of book on how to make this guitar. All right. Yeah. And so I bought the book from John, and my first creation was this one in 2006 because John Gentileschi taught me how to paint.
Oh man, that's crazy.
That was the first one. But then the second one I just did like you did because I wanted to do something, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to do that.
You got the slanted pickup? Yeah. See, you need the slanted pickup with the hole too big, and you need the top part, and it says Gibson too. That's amazing.
And this is my little thing on the back.
Dude, I'm jealous now. That's another thing that I got from John. John, he just showed up at a Bon Jovi show one day, and he goes, "I got something for you," and he drops a bunch of pics in my hand, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, these are the pics you can get on the site." He goes, "No, those are the pics Ed used," and I was like, "What the fuck? I love you, man."
Yeah,
So crazy.
that's wild because yeah, the book I had, back then you didn't have any. Well, back in that point, you didn't have as many resources to get all the details. Like that has
Exactly. But I gotta ask you, because we've been talking, and it's me doing all the talking and stuff like that, and this is how we actually meet face to face, which is by Cyberland. How did you feel, man, that day?
the day done. I made a video about it, man. I had met him in 2015 at the Smithsonian. I was at that event. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, yeah, and this is a weird thing that happened to me, dude. I went up. Well, let me go back earlier to about 1991. My girlfriend takes me to NAMM, throws me in front of Eddie Van Halen at the Ernie Ball party. Remember the one with Steve Morris and all them?
I was there. Yeah, I saw that.
Okay, you were there. So I was there. I was up on the front side, on the left side, but right up front though. And when he came across at the end, he was shaking everybody's hands and blah blah blah. I'm 20. I'm like 22. Dude,
Yeah.
I froze. I look, I couldn't even reach out to shake his hand. So I had been tortured for 30 years until I ended up getting a ticket to this thing in 2015. So I
Yeah.
go to that, and of course at the end he meets and greets, which is unusual for him, almost never,
Yeah.
unless it was a dealer thing or something.
Right.
And I shook his hand, dude. And when you talk about his hands, he said it. He had an amazing stretch.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
mega.
Yeah, man. So do you.
I don't, man.
Mine's not so much, man. Not so much.
But yeah, man. He. This is weird. This is kind of a surreal thing. But I turned around to shake his hand one more time, and for some reason, bro, in my head, something told me, he goes, "This is the last and only time."
Wow.
And I didn't tell anybody about it, right? Because it just, you know how like when you're like, it's not a conscious thought that you would ever think. I didn't want to think that. That's just what came to me.
No, but you know what? He was sick for a long time, and it came and went, and he beat it, and then it got really bad, and at least he was, everybody in that situation, you're just glad that the suffering's over, right?
Yeah. And I guess you're right. On in some way, you just didn't know at that point in time, 2015. He was doing
No.
great. I mean, he was playing like, dude,
He was playing his ass
that
off.
last tour, you saw 2015, I hope, right?
Yeah.
He played his ass off, and
He wanted to shoot Dave, but he played his ass off.
his tone was fantastic. That I was outside.
I still think it was a little gainy.
Yeah.
Like, because everybody's like, "Hey, man, did you try the stealth amp yet?" I'm like, "What's the difference? It's more gain." I'm like, "Yeah, I know."
They don't need more gain. Right, but I think maybe because I was outside for the first time with Van Halen on an amphitheater. I got it. Normally it was arena, but
There's something magical about outside, man.
well,
Oh, yeah.
it's not so much bouncing off the walls and all that.
Yeah. Crazy.
That's crazy, man. So thanks for having me. Coming on here and being with me today. And
Oh, dude, I talk about Eddie Van Halen every day, every minute. It's
I know you do. That's why I called you. You're a perfect. You are a perfect guest. I knew it'd be great. I knew it'd be great the second that somebody. I mean, Lewis and I were talking, and I knew he was talking to you, but then it just hit me one day. With these guests, I don't really. I kind of plan. I kind of like think, who could I have? But then sometimes it just hits me like, oh God, Phil X. Why didn't I think of Phil X?
Yeah.
And I was like,
that's awesome.
Dude, I had to get with you. So thanks for doing that. It's amazing, the stuff that you gotten to do, and you went from like I did from a kid that saw this guy, and to the point where you're with the dude in the room, and
Yeah, you know what? I have that, and it's pretty amazing to cherish. Moments like that are kind of like spectacular. And you can just pull it out of your pocket once in a while. And people ask, and I'm like, yeah, but, and then somebody says, "I heard you only met him 3 times." I'm like, I'm good with that, man. I got to do what I got to do, and that's fantastic. And it's like I said, it's like, how do you act when you meet your Jesus? I mean, I know a lot of people are going to be like, "Oh yeah, that's it's just a comparison that, like I was saying, he was from another world, man, and there won't be anyone like him ever again.
Well, you know, my friend, I think it's my second guest, Damon Johnson, that I was telling you about earlier, who I grew up with, toured with him in '95. Of course, as soon as he got back, I was like, dude, what was it like to meet Eddie Van Halen? And he was like, dude, he's just a regular guy like us. And I looked at him and I said, bro, he's the guy who played guitar in Van Halen 1. What the hell are you talking about? But yeah, he said, and you haven't seen this episode, but he said it was like meeting Jesus. Exactly what you just said.
Yeah. And you know what? It's amazing thing. And I know guys being in LA and having buds that saw Van Halen at the Whiskey in '76.
Right.
And having a friend like Steve Lukather, who they were bros. Right. I mean, you hear some of the best stuff all the time. You know, I hear the best stories, and it's not about sharing others' stories, you know. But could you imagine you're George Lynch and you see a guy like Eddie Van Halen play at the Whiskey, and you're like, oh man,
right?
I thought I was good.
Right. Lynch was there. He saw all that. Yeah, it was, you know, Greg Leon, who's been on, was also there. You know, he saw him at that Glendale High School show with Quiet Riot, you know, the famous Quiet Riot Van Halen show. He didn't know anything. He walked in the room, and the janitor got him a front row seat for that show, and he walked in, and Van Halen and Quiet Riot came out together that night. He said,
that's amazing. How crazy is that?
Right? It's insanity. But I don't want to keep you all day, man. I could, because we could just talk about this.
Dude, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And send me that audio, bro. I want to hear that.
Yeah. As soon as I get off the phone.
Okay. Well, if you need anything, let me know, man, and I'll get this thing put together and get it out. And maybe somewhere down the road we'll run into each other again.
We will. And then let me know when you do post it, and I'll share it too, obviously.
Thank you, buddy. Thank you, Phil.
Take care, man.
See you, buddy. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.